Uranos the Undying, origin explored. If you think Thanos is the deadliest supervillain, think again. After everyone finished watching Avengers Infinity War, all had one thought, which was the fact that Thanos was extraordinarily evil and strong. He soon went on to become one of the deadliest supervillains in the history of films, making the likes of Ultron look like puny mortals. However, there is someone who is far eviler than Thanos. Someone who won't just kill half the planet, but wipe out all of humanity if he wanted to. Someone who doesn't need the infinity gauntlet or need to snap his fingers to kill. This person is none other than Thanos' very grand uncle, Uranos. Yes, you heard that right. Although Thanos has his family back in Titan, he does have an Earth family which is comprised of the Eternals, each more potent than the other. But what happens when you are introduced to the strongest and most evil Eternal that there is to exist? Join us in exploring Uranos the Undying and how one character wiped out an entire planet of mutants in 1 hour. Here's everything you need to know about Uranos. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. So thank you, and let's begin. Uranos the Undying. Just like every other Eternal, Uranos was created by the Celestials 1 million years ago. The Eternals have all been derived from Greek mythology. For example, Athena is Athena, just like Uranos is derived from Uranus. Funnily enough, in Greek mythology, Uranus is the personification of heaven. But that is far from what Uranos in Marvel is like, considering he rains hellfire on every deviant he comes across. Eternals, the Heretic Volume 1. Issue 1 focuses on a character who is way worse than Thanos, but the comic begins by showcasing just how ruthless of a leader Thanos can be as he drags Vulcan of Polaria through a corridor and throws him into a cell. For those of you who don't know Vulcan just yet, he is one of the Polar Eternals and the father of Druig. In the comic, after Vulcan has been thrown into the cell, Druig approaches him, telling him that he hopes his exclusion in the cell would be brief, at least fast enough for an Eternal. Vulcan doesn't hold back showing his disappointment. The fact that his own son has chosen to collaborate with Thanos really struck a nerve. Vulcan expresses that he wished the Celestials had carved him into a statue made of dung instead of giving Druig to him. Druig is quick to respond to his father while defending his actions because, according to Druig, some have to be selfless enough to put certain things above their dignity and ethics. Druig truly believes that what he has done so far has been nothing but an act of bravery. Thanos overhears the conversation between the father and son. As the cell door closes, Thanos interrogates Druig about what he had said, wondering what Druig has put above his dignity and ethics. His survival, as Druig puts it, while calmly responding to Thanos. There is no doubt that Thanos isn't pleased with Druig's answer, as he proceeds to call him a snake. And Druig tells him that this is how the Celestials left him, insinuating that he played almost no part in how his actions or words panned out. Undoubtedly, Thanos wasn't pleased, but the truth was, not much could please Thanos to begin with, and Druig wasn't going to be the starting point. Not right away, at least. Thanos goes on to talk about his family on Titan, the planet he was originally from, and how he often wondered what his family on Earth would be like. On Titan, his mother and father cast Thanos into the hell of a life. His brother Eros, who was merely a poorly written paragraph in Thanos' epic verse, and lastly, Kronos, Thanos' grandfather, who urged everyone to stop Thanos, who was also a Time Lord who had far too much power but never used it for anything. Now, Thanos was stuck with weaklings compared to his family in Titan. Druig contemplates for a moment before telling Thanos that he was much like Druig's grandfather, who was also Thanos' great uncle and was often disappointed in his family. We edge closer to the character's introduction on who the comic is based, as Druig asks Thanos if he would like to meet Uranos, who was captured and imprisoned because they couldn't risk killing him. Druig continues moving forward in the direction of where Uranos was supposedly imprisoned. Curiosity is no sin, my lord, is what Druig says. Thanos stands next to him, looking at the door of the cell. You could draw a comparison between this cell and the one where Vulcan was thrown into. Uranos' cell looked like it was more robust and harder to break out of, and this one merely hinted at how dangerous the being inside was. Of course, Thanos was curious, but he was far from admitting it. Keeping his unbothered exterior intact, Thanos asked Druig to go ahead and open the cell door. As the door opens, there's a smidge of humor by the comic's narrator who decides to exit, previously hinting at how this might be a wrong decision. You killed half the universe, boy. 50%. What a lack of commitment. Do something or don't do it. These are the first words uttered by the infamous Uranos, with a stoic look on his face. Thanos wasn't fazed at all by this. Far from it when he responds by offering a tally of the number of people he killed, which is far more than what Uranos assumed it was. Thanos even threatens to kill Uranos after barely being introduced to him, suggesting they coin a term for when somebody kills their granduncle. You would think this might anger Uranos and force him to break out of the hold that he was bound in, but instead, Uranos casually challenges Thanos, which only seemed like a ploy so that Thanos would let Uranos out. Maybe it was at this point that Druig thought introducing Thanos to Uranos was a bad idea, but Thanos declined the offer, telling Uranos that he must stay put there. Uranos makes a small attempt to try and get Thanos to release him by challenging him. Still, Thanos refuses, and Uranos doesn't push further, letting Thanos know that he will be here when Thanos is ready, and until then, he should just enjoy his rule as the Prime Eternal. We travel 600,000 years back to Earth when humans did not exist. It was a time when Uranos the Undying killed large beasts and lived among far too many deviants, those he never cared for. He didn't care for anything. He wondered why anyone should be chained forever, but he had a solution that would free his kind. The comic switches back to the present, where Uranos is directly talking to Thanos, telling him that the responsibilities and their rights can be tedious. Although the Celestials had left behind a problem, Uranos had the final solution. Those were the days before a Prime Eternal existed, when Uranos didn't have to worry about little things like Druig, or about politics to put things into motion. This was the era of the three patriarchs, and Uranos would bring the solution to his brothers, who were men of science, giving them a chance to see the reason behind his solution. We are transported to Titanos, the first city of the Eternals, at the patriarchal core, where Uranos speaks to his brothers. Uranos tells them that he has a new course to set, one that would leave them as free masters of their destiny and better servants of the Celestials. His solution is to clean the planet of deviants entirely, once and for all. Uranos assures them that he has the weapons to execute this plan. His brothers point out that what he is talking about is genocide, and Uranos defends his solution by saying that no principle prevents genocide, especially if it is a tool for the right task. His brothers simply refuse, trying to make Uranos understand that this was beyond immoral, and the Celestials might just need the deviants at some point. Uranos doesn't fight back, simply stating that he was disappointed, but he thanked them for listening nonetheless. Uranos wasn't happy with the deviants though. What started as 100 deviants had now plagued the entire planet, and according to him, served only as a distraction. He failed to understand why his brothers weren't on board with his solution. Uranos hadn't spent the last 400,000 years sitting idle. He had the weapons, he had the means to wipe out all the deviants, and he was going to go ahead with this plan. Uranos had one principle at this point, which was that any deviation is excess deviation and must be eliminated to protect the machine, which was broadly the entire planet as defined by the Eternals. Anything outside this machine must be purged. These were his principles. This is what Uranos stood by, and he started a war. As Uranos continues telling his story, Thanos interrupts by pointing out that this was a war that Uranos had lost. Uranos defends himself by saying that he was betrayed. This is the first time in a while that Druig speaks, and they let him. "You were betrayed because you lost," were Druig's exact words, and it turns out he was one of the people on Uranos' side who betrayed him. Nevertheless, Uranos applauds Druig's will to survive and talks about how Druig was the one who arranged for Uranos to be taken away alive. When Uranos' brothers asked him for a defense, he had none other than the fact that if they were to end him, the entire machine would end with him. The principles would not matter when the failsafes trigger. He had thought of every single possibility there was. The Eternals came at him in waves for an entire century, but no one could do anything, and he continued to fight on. And so, his brothers took him away to Exclusion, which is where they stood now, which is where he spent 600,000 years. Thanos realizes that if he were to kill Uranos, everyone else would die too. Uranos needed a moment with Thanos alone, and Druig was sent away. If Druig didn't regret letting Thanos into the cell before, he was most likely regretting it now. Uranos hands Thanos the imprint key to his armories, which will let Thanos access the failsafe should he need it, and it will destroy the entire machine. Although Thanos accepts it, he wonders why Uranos would trust him with the greatest secret. Uranos explains that he finally sees a member of his lineage that isn't a disappointment. Thanos begins to thank Uranos by calling him his granduncle, but quickly changes it to his grandfather. As the comic draws to an end, we realize this is only the beginning of several things that will go wrong with the power that Thanos has now. If there were two people on the planet with similar trains of thought and ambitions, they were Uranos and Thanos. Uranos destroyed Urano in only an hour. The Eternals have one purpose, which is to correct and eliminate all deviations, and the X-Men have discovered the secret to immortality, which is truly the ultimate transgression in the eyes of the Eternals. Now, the X-Men must pay the price. While the fans anticipated from the earlier issues in the comic book series that the Eternals' involvement in this would be one of a kind, they did not expect what would happen. XMen Red issue number 5 begins on planet Urano, where we see a few mutants gathered, including Abigail Brand and Cable. They need help because they are aware that the Earth's Eternals will initiate conflict with the mutant kind, maybe even as soon as that very moment. As Abigail speaks, the comic has a countdown at the bottom right of every panel, which serves as its purpose of making it all the more exciting for the readers as they brace themselves for what's about to happen. As ideal, the Omega Seer makes it clear that although she can see the future, she cannot by any means alter it. An empty heart beats the hardest, and an empty hand deals the impossible blow, and the statement ends with victory's loss. This is what Seer predicts regarding what's about to happen. The empty hand that deals the impossible blow could be Uranos, considering all the weapons he has and the destruction he can cause. Victory's loss could potentially mean the loss of mutant kind. As more mutants begin to gather around, they try and discuss ways to fight the Eternals because they will not hold back their force on the Red Planet, and the countdown at the bottom of the page seems to go by quicker than expected. Before they can discuss any further, a blinding light overwhelms them and they try to brace for impact, but they all go flying when their threat arrives. Uranos addresses the mutants directly, introducing himself and letting them know that they have deviated excessively, and he has a grand total of 1 hour to correct them. The moment Uranos left the exclusion, his armories were activated, and now they have spread around everywhere to infect and consume. It is Judgment Day and a battle between the mutant kind and one eternal Uranos. The air shimmers all over. Ora Serata is doubling down on Uranos, let him know that the eye of the law is upon him, but he doesn't care. He is far from fazed by any of this as he stands firm, abiding by the principles that are coded in him. All life must end. That is the only law that he knows. It's the only law that he cares about. Uranos delivers a direct hit into the giant eye, moving Ora Serata out of his way within a matter of seconds. Next, he deals with David Haller, the son of Charles Xavier, making him true mutant royalty. Maybe he will hold his own against Uranos. Meanwhile, the other mutants back at Urano realize that Uranos' assault has begun to spread across the Red Planet as they lose contact with other stations. Lactuca tells them that Uranos has weapons of death all over that fight without him. David Haller was gone, and now Uranos returned to fight the rest of them. Next in line, we have Magneto. Meanwhile, on other parts of the planet, the mutants try to fight the machines that work for Uranos without his command or his presence, but it becomes increasingly difficult to beat them. For a brief moment, Uranos is actually impressed by Magneto, who managed to fight Uranos with the help of magneticism and telekinesis. Still, it feels like mockery when Uranos breaks away from Magneto's hold with ease. Uranos punches Magneto, reaching into his body as he pulls out Magneto's heart. The mutants don't even have time to mourn their fellow kind as they continue to fight Uranos before he slaughters them all. But can they really achieve something like this when Magneto or Legion couldn't even hold their own for a few minutes against Uranos? Cable brings out the most powerful rifle in his arsenal, the Omega-1 Pulse, which fires bullets of ultra-dense solid light that could even melt osmium. Surely this would be more than enough to destroy Uranos, but it barely weakens him. Uranos smiles down at him, asking Cable if that's all that he's got. The rifle overheats, but Uranos' weapons all over the place do not, as they continue causing destruction all over. One by one, all the mutants try to use their powers and attempt to destroy Uranos, but they fail miserably every single time. It seemed like a dead end as more lost their lives. There was nothing that can stop him and his bloodthirsty mind that was determined to kill them all. Night had fallen and 20 minutes had passed. Urano still has 40 minutes in his arsenal to try to destroy anyone, and given his success rate, that seemed like more than enough time to do so. He uses this time well. By the time the 60 minutes are over, so is 98% of the life within a 50-mile radius. Uranos leaves the planet incredibly satisfied with his work. He doesn't even look back to check, and he never does because of how confident he is when it comes to matters of death and killing. But he was foolish in doing so this time around. Lotus Logos and Aura, the giant eye who received a hard blow from Uranos, both survive and realize that there might be other mutants who did as well. It is unsure if this mutant healed and survived, or was resurrected, but there is no doubt that it is his turn to rain down hellfire on Uranos now, and it is none other than Magneto. What makes Uranos so deadly? If you've made it this far into the video, there's no doubt you already know how deadly Uranos is, but there's a little more about what makes him so deadly. This Eternal is often compared to his grandson Thanos. Because of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, most fans know what Thanos is capable of and how he has destroyed many lives with the snap of his fingers. However, if there's one person who has a body count way higher than Thanos, it's his grandfather, Uranos. If you think about it, Thanos only wiped out half of planet Earth, but Uranos, on the other hand, is all up for total genocide, showing no mercy to anyone. As shown in one of the comics, he even points out to Thanos that he should kill everyone and not just half of the population, and that it shows a lack of commitment to the job. Uranos can shoot lasers from his eyes and energy blasts from his chest, which are powerful enough to destroy certain planets. However, when he needs more help, just like he did with a planet full of some very strong mutants, he uses weapons in his arsenal to destroy them. He spent a very long time creating and perfecting these weapons to the extent that they worked even without him controlling them. They were made of celestial energy, and with those, he was easily one of the most powerful beings in the history of the Marvel Universe. Apart from his weapons and powers, what makes Uranos so deadly is the fact that he doesn't care about anyone, nor does he care about the consequences of his actions. Very often in the comics, he is shown as someone who is unresponsive, or at the most nonchalant, to most matters of death and genocide, which probably makes him a lot deadlier because he never stops to think about what he has done. Undoubtedly, if this character is introduced in the films, he would most likely bring an end to anyone and everyone who crosses his path. Every time you encounter a supervillain in Marvel, stop and ask yourself if this one is as deadly as Uranos. The answer will likely be no. But if the answer is yes, it's wise to read back on some more comics featuring Uranos and ask yourself the same question again. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thank you, everyone.